Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopijana Ballabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Rajajanandana Yasodanandana Rajajanandana Yasodanandana Rajajanandana Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivacharya Ashtata Saraswati A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Go Premanandi All glorious to the assembled devotees All glorious to Sri Guru and Gauranga All glorious to Shri Prabhupada Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Ki Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vacharine Nirvasesha Sanyavari Pastachari Shatana. Hare Krishna. So this morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 21, text number 34. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Asau Iha Aneka Gunaha Agunaha Advaraha Pritakvida Dravya Guna Kriya Uktibihi Sampadhyate Artha Ashaya Linga Namabihi Vishuddha Vijnana Ghana Swarupataha Asavikaneka Guno Gunadvara Pitag Vidadravya Gunapiyo Tibi Sampajyater Tasaya Linganamabir Vishuddha Vijnana Ganak Swarupataha Asavihaneka gano gano dvara Pritag vita dravya guna kriyot tibi Sampadjate tashaya linganamavir Vishuddha vijnana na sarupataha Asavihaneka guno gunodvara Pritag vita dravya guna kriyoktibihi Sampadjate tashaya linganamavir Vishuddha vijnana ganak sarupataha Anybody else like to chant? A soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Iha, in this material world. Aneka, various. Gunaha, qualities. Agunaha, transcendental. Advaraha, yagna. Pritakvita, varieties. Dravya, physical elements. Guna, ingredients. Kriya, performances. Uktibihi, by chanting different mantras. Sampajyate is worship. Artha, interest. Ashaya, purpose. Linga, form. Nabhabihi, name. Vishuddha, without contamination. Vijnana, science. Ghanaha, concentrated. Svarupataha, in his own form. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Each day the purport gets longer. Today it's almost 3 pages long. So bear with us. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental and not contaminated by this material world. But although he has concentrated his spirit soul without material variety, for the benefit of the conditioned soul, he nevertheless accepts different types of sacrifice performed with various material elements, rituals and mantras, and offered to the demigods under different names according to the interests and purposes of the performers. Interesting verse. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, for material prosperity there are recommendations in the Vedas for various types of yajna, sacrifice. In Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that Lord Brahma created all living entities, including human beings and demigods, and advised them to perform yajna according to their material desires. Saha yajna praja shishva. These performances are called yajnas because their ultimate goal is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. The purpose of performing yajna is to get material benefit, but because the aim is to simultaneously satisfy the Supreme Lord, such yajnas have been recommended in the Vedas. Such performances are of course known as karma kanda, or material activity, and all material activities are certainly contaminated by the 3 modes of material nature. Generally, the karma kanda ritualistic ceremonies are performed in the mode of passion, yet the conditioned souls, both human beings and demigods, are obliged to perform these yajnas because without them one cannot be happy at all. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that these Karmakanda ritualistic ceremonies, although contaminated, contain touches of devotional service, because whenever there is a performance of any yajna, Lord Vishnu is given a central position. This is very important because even a little endeavor to please Lord Vishnu is bhakti and is of great value. Nice line, isn't it? Even a little endeavor, a tinge of bhakti, a little endeavor to please Lord Vishnu is bhakti and is of great value. Lord Vishnu, a tinge of bhakti purifies the material nature of the performances, which by devotional service gradually come to the transcendental position. Therefore, although such yajnas are superficially material activities, the results are ultimately transcendental. Such yajnas as Surya Yajna, Indra Yajna, Chandra Yajna are performed in the names of the demigods. But these demigods are bodily parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demigods cannot accept sacrificial offerings for themselves, but they can accept them for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as a departmental tax collector of a government cannot collect taxes for his personal account, but can realize them for the government. A simple example given there by Prabhupada. Demigods are the agents of the Lord, limbs of the Lord. Whatever is offered to them, they're meant to pass it on to Vishnu. So in that sense, everything is for, even if the performer doesn't know, in the execution of the yajna, if he's following any Vedic system, Lord Vishnu will be in the center, although he's not exactly approaching Lord Vishnu, he's there in the yajna, and he's praying to the demigods or whatever, and offerings to the demigods, but the demigods being very, executing the order of the Lord, devotees of the Lord, they offer that to their Lord. Otherwise, one is considered a thief. In the Bhagavad Gita we see that if one doesn't perform these, offer these sacrifices to the demigods, one is considered a thief. Those were in the material modes of passion and ignorance. They must make these performances, these worship, according to the Vedic system, even to the demigods, because it's recommended, as Prabhupada says here, there is a tinge of bhakti in those yajnas, because Vishnu's name is mentioned, Vishnu is there in the various yajna arrangements, etc. So there's a tinge of bhakti there. And because that tinge of bhakti, as Prabhupada says here, of great value, is also considered to be a little bit of bhakti there, and it will gradually develop into pure. That's the idea, if done properly. That's why we've been hearing how great kings perform their activities, and seemingly like material activities, but to show the karmis, the materialistic people, how to do those things in a way which will help them to eventually become Krishna conscious. Any yajna performed with this complete knowledge and understanding is described in the Bhagavad Gita as brahmarpanam, or sacrifice offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since no one but the Supreme Lord can enjoy the results of sacrifice, the Lord says that He is the actual enjoyer of all sacrifices. Bhoktaram yagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram. Sacrifices should be performed with this view in mind. And as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 4:24, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, Brahmagno Brahmanahutam, Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam, Brahmakarma Samadhina. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. This is specifically referring to those who are performing complete, absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Their yajna is not indirect, it's direct. They're sure to attain the spiritual nature because everything they do is for the pleasure of Krishna, as we heard yesterday Samsiddhir Haitoshanam. It's not to attain anything on one's own account. And it's not trying to bribe, as Prabhupada sometimes said, bribe the government agents so that you get some special material privileges. The performer of sacrifice must always keep in view that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas are meant to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vishnur Aradyate Pantaha. Anything material or spiritual done for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord is understood to be an actual yajna, and by performing such yajnas, one gets liberation from material bondage, even without asking. A nice mentioning herein. Yajna, anything which is done for the pleasure of the Lord. It may not, when we use the word yajna or sacrifice, it sounds like, to some people it sounds like, something, let's say, not so pleasant, a little bit of a austerity or something. But it's not. It's tasyanti-cha, ramanti-cha. Joyfully performed. This sacrifice is joyfully performed. Very joyful. And not at all, say, materially speaking, not at all miserable, not at all disturbing, not at all austere in one sense. As Prabhupada, in a letter to a Sanctam party, described how, although it may be living in a cold van in the winter with no proper food, no proper place to stay in England, still, for you, it appears to be simply play or fun. Very joyful. Joyfully performed. Because it's not done for sense gratification. It's done for the service of the spiritual master and ultimately Krishna. It's done with knowledge. It's not like the worship of the demigods where people are actually aspiring for material returns and they actually think that particular demigod is the source of fulfillment of those particular desires or those objects of desire. Whereas we read in the Bhagavad Gita that the demigods, actually, they cannot, it's actually Krishna or Vishnu is providing through the agency of the demigods. They cannot on themselves provide. So all the various yajnas are really ultimately meant for Lord Vishnu. It's just performed in the wrong way, performed in ignorance, not understanding the unique position of Lord Vishnu, not understanding the difference between matter and spirit, not understanding the real goal or purpose of sacrifice. Performed in ignorance and passion. So they get an ignorant and passionate result, but ultimately they're also going to get a drop of devotional mercy because they're following a Vedic system, which includes the worship of Lord Vishnu in all various Vedic yajnas. Lord Vishnu is glorified. So anyone who takes part, although they may be very materialistic, they may appear to be opposed even to bhakti, are knowingly or unknowingly engaged in a little bit of bhakti. And in due course of time, that will grow and will actually produce a seed of devotion. Well, the seed's already there. A plant of devotional service will begin to sprout. The direct method of getting liberation from material bondage is devotional service, comprising the 9 following methods: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada, Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmani, Vedam. And that was spoken by Prahlad Maharaj when he talked to his father. His father was very keen that his son become an expert sense gratifier, an expert materialist. And when he asked him what the best thing he'd learned at school, of course he was hoping he would say something. The best thing I learned at school today is that there's no God. Everything's material. The goal of life is to try to control the material elements and enjoy, or some scientific knowledge, or some historical knowledge, some kind of mundane knowledge. He was hoping his son would tell him something in those lines. How to make money, how to enjoy. But he didn't. He quoted this verse. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Pada Sevanam Archanam Vandanam Dashyam Sakyam Atmani Vedanam. From the 7th canto of Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj answered this. And what was his answer? The ninefold process of hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, praying, surrendering to the lotus feet, becoming a servant, a friend, and full surrender. This is the only thing of real value which I've heard to Vishnu, to Krishna. Not to you, but to Krishna. If he said, Shravanam Kirtanam Hiranyakashipu, then his father would have been very pleased. But he didn't. He said Vishnu. And that was, of course it wasn't a mistake, but in one sense, let's say, his father took that as being a dreadful, unbearable, absolutely ghastly statement. Horrific, absolutely horrific statement that my son is making. He's glorifying the demons. The demons in the eyes of Hiranyakashipu were his enemies. If he was a demon, the demons tend to think others, even saintly persons, they're their enemy. They must be removed, extinguished. The ninefold process is described in this verse as Vishuddha Vijnana Ganaha, or satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly by transcendental knowledge concentrated on the form of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. This is the best method for satisfying the Supreme Lord. Directly, it says here, not even indirectly, but directly concentrated on the form of the Supreme Personality of God. If the Lord appears in different forms, He's appeared in Namarupa also. So concentrating on the sound of the holy name is also concentrating on the form in that sense. It's the Namarupa. But the focus, that what we're doing is for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu, not for anything else, or Lord Krishna in his various forms. This is the best method of satisfying the Supreme Lord. One who cannot take to this direct process, however, should take the indirect process of performing yagyas for the satisfaction of Vishnu. So the first kind is one who lives in focus, in consciousness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's already fixed, Mamana Bhavamat Bhakto, Majaji Mam Namasku. His mind is fixed on Vishnu or Krishna in his various forms of the name of the Lord. And the other type is performing sacrifices for the worship or the pleasure of Lord Vishnu ultimately, and which will gradually lead one to become fixed. It's like we see in the Bhagavad Gita 12th chapter, where Krishna describes briefly, different stages, you could say, of elevation in spirituality. And after having described a little bit about the impersonal path as being very troublesome and very difficult, then he describes the devotional path, Bhakti Marg, and the top one is to always being absorbed in the Lord, constantly absorbed in the Lord, everything, nothing else in one's life. If one's not on that level, then he says, follow the rules and regulations of devotional service, and one will gradually come to that platform of samadhi. So then down, down, down. If you can't do that even, then you work for me. You do work for me. Somehow or another, one after the next. Different levels, different stages. Each one can lead to the higher one in due course of time. So this is the two things here. One is the pure devotee. Doesn't need to perform, as ritualistic yogis, let's say. His life is already a yogi. It's already a pleasure for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. He doesn't need to perform an external one, although he may to show others how to do it. Otherwise he has no interest in external yogas. It's not any. The only purpose of external yogas is meant, ultimately, to come to this platform of realizing Krishna's transcendental nature and realizing our relationship with him and realizing everything is meant for his satisfaction. He is the Bhoktara Yogya Tapasam. He is the enjoyer, Bhoktaram, Yogya Tapasam, of all yogya or sacrifices. He is the enjoyer, not us. And this way, gradually, if done properly, one may start to realize that it's really not, the yoga is not being performed for my sense gratification. It is meant for the pleasure of Krishna or Vishnu. Vishnu is therefore called Yagyapati. Shriya Patim Yagyapatim Jagatpatim. Nice verse. Second canto. The Supreme Personality of God is deep, scientific knowledge is concentrated to the supreme point. For example, medical science knows some things superficially, but doctors do not know exactly how things happen in the body. Lord Krishna, however, knows everything in detail. Just like I was reading yesterday, looking up different, just briefly looking at what do you call it, psoriasis. I think our Sevanidhi has psoriasis, one of our devotees here. And there's the medical world doesn't know what causes it, they don't know how to cure it. Simple as that, they say. It's many things they don't know. Even that which they can see, that which they can analyze, they still don't know how it's caused or how to solve it. So they're in ignorance. Therefore, Krishna's knowledge is Vijnana Guna, because it does not have any of the defects of material science. 4 defects in the material world commits. What are the 4 defects? What are the 4 defects in the material world? Who knows? Imperfect senses. One more from somebody else. Commit mistakes. Tendency to commit mistakes. 2 more. Huh? Cheating propensity. 1 more. Yes, Ekanath. I was going to say. 1 more. Tendency to be illusioned. 4 defects of every single. They may not manifest in great amounts, but they're there in everyone in this material universe. Everyone has these 4 defects, or potentially one is subjected to these 4 defects. Only the one who is transcendental to the modes of nature is not affected by these 4 defects. They have no cheating, they're not an illusion, they know who they are, they know who is God, they know what the material energy is, etc. They know the causes of bondage and the method of release. They know everything, basically, that's needed to be known. They're not an illusion. They're not going to cheat. Everyone in the material world is a cheat because we think, we're trying to convince ourselves this is mine and convince others likewise. Whereas the devotee knows everything belongs to Krishna and everything should be used in his service. He's not cheating people in the name of knowledge or religion or philosophy or whatever. He knows the truth. And he's presenting the truth. He's not a cheat. He's not trying to win followers by making a, compromised presentation. And they don't make mistakes because everything they do is for Krishna. Usually people think of a mistake as being something materially calculable. But it's not. A mistake is to do anything other than that which pleases the Lord. So pure devotees always do things for the pleasure of the Lord. And imperfect senses, where their senses are connected to Krishna. Therefore their senses are being properly engaged. They're not imperfect. Imperfect senses means senses being engaged for material reasons. They're limited also, of course, we can say that. It appears that devotees' senses are limited too. We can't see what's on the other side of the wall either. But we know everything is Krishna's. Form of Krishna is expansive energy. Everything belongs to Krishna. So the devotee sees everything in relation with Krishna and uses his senses in the service of Krishna. And thus, everything becomes Brahma-parpam. Whatever. It becomes spiritualized. Spiritualized. So it's not imperfect. Appears to be. But it's appearing to be, say, imperfect. From those who have imperfect vision. Those who have imperfect vision cannot possibly see the Atakshri Krishna Namadi Nabhava Gwayamendra. Seva Mukha Jivado Swayameva Sprachit. They cannot see the transcendental form of the Lord. It's not possible. They can't see the transcendental nature of the energies of the Lord. They see everything relatively, according to their own condition. With blunt material senses, no one can understand this. It's only possible when the Lord reveals these things, through the process, Shravananari Shurachite, Karyudai, when the heart becomes cleansed by hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, etc. Then the Lord will reveal the truths within the heart to the devotee as they advance in Krishna consciousness. The different kinds of material paraphernalia or physical elements are also gradually transformed into spiritual understanding, because ultimately there's no difference between material and spiritual qualities, for everything emanates from the Supreme Spirit. From Krishna's point of view, everything is spiritual. It's just that certain living entities choose to see separately from the Lord, so the Lord makes a corner of his spiritual energy, kind of covers it with the illusory spell, with Maya, and the living entities thus see it separated from the Lord. They see it as material. They may not kind of see it in comparison to spirit, but they just see it as material. They see it relatively speaking. They don't see its spiritual nature. A pure devotee sees even the material as spiritual nature of this world. He sees everything as spiritual. It's just like a cloud in the sky, and it appears when you're under the cloud that the sun has gone in. The sun is not there. It's dark, or darker. At night time it's dark, but the whole universe is enlightened. It's just because we're on the back of the Earth planet, everything appears to be dark. But it's not dark. Dark is simply absence of light. And the absence of light is because of a covering. That covering is material nature, covering our consciousness, and thus we're not seeing the spiritual nature. We're only seeing the reflection, as we see the reflection of the sunlight when we're under the clouds. You can't see the sun, but we have the reflection. Or at night there's very little reflection, sometimes next to none. It's almost jet black. But some little bit may be there, some from the moon or somehow or another, whatever it is. A little bit of light is there. But basically it's darkness, because our vision is covered. The sun is not covered, it's we who are covered. Prabhupada goes on. The different kinds of material paraphernalia, we read that. For everything emanates. This is realized by a gradual process of realization and purification. One vivid example of this is Dhruva Maharaj, who took to meditation in the forest to achieve material benefits, but ultimately became spiritually advanced and did not want any benediction for material profit. He was simply satisfied with the association of the Supreme Lord. Ahashaya means determination. Generally, a conditioned soul has the determination for material profit. But when these desires for material profit are satisfied through performance of yogya, one gradually achieves the spiritual platform. Then his life becomes perfect. Srimad Bhagavatam therefore recommends Akama savakamo va mokshakamo dadidi tivena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Everyone, whether akama, a devotee akama, akama means basically with no desire, no kama, no lust. Sarva kama, all desires, a karmi has so many material desires. Or moksha kama, a jnani or yogi who wants deliverance from the world of sense gratification. But it's yogis, the material, the mayavadis, they may achieve that platform, but all that is a negation of matter. So it's still really not a positive thing. It's simply a negation of matter. There's no object. We were reading this morning, actually, Siddhartha Maharaj was saying, for those in the Brahman, there is no object for service. There's no existence, there's no differentiation. There is, but it's not manifested. There's no awareness of any differentiation, so there's no object of service, there's no bhakti. So there's no rasa. It's not complete. It's just a negation of the material situation. The material situation being a reflection of the spiritual one. There is rasa, although it's contaminated, it's imperfect, you could say. But the rasa, or relationship, is there in the material world, whereas in the Brahmajyoti it's not. So for a devotee, Brahmajyoti is the worst place to be. More hellish than anywhere in the material universe. Even the hellish planets are better than Brahmajyoti for a devotee. Because in hell there might still be a chance of rendering service. because there's objects or persons to render service to. But in Brahmajyoti there's nobody. Neither God, neither individual living entities. Everything's one, all-pervasive, supreme, absolute. But there is no personal interaction therein. In the material world there is personal, be it in ignorance, passion, or goodness. But there is personal interaction in the material world. And pure devotion service means freed of all the inebriaties, all of the effects of passion and ignorance. Free of all those various coverings, so that the devotee can see things for what they are. And has no aspiration for anything material whatsoever. Because as Prabhupada mentions, Dhruva Maharaj, that he developed this taste for devotional service under the direction of Narada Muni, and he lost all attraction for even his own kingdom, wife, everything. He lost all attraction and became pure devotee of the Lord. And we'll finish the purport, a few more sentences. Ashaya means determination. Then his life becomes perfect. Shrima, we read that. Everyone, whether akama, sarvakama, or mokshakama, is encouraged to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the direct method of devotional service. In this way, one can get both material and spiritual profit simultaneously. Yes, the Lord provides both. Huh? He likes to see his devotees satisfied, and he fulfills something. Many times he fulfills, even with Dhruva Maharaj, with many of these great persons, he fulfill their desire that they may want a king. They may want to be like the Indra, have a great kingdom, maybe the pole star, the Vaikuntha planet in this universe greater than Brahmaloka. And the Lord may fulfill that also, as well as their devotional spirit. Krishna does that. To take away the material covering or the material impediment. He may also provide the material results, and then the devotee very much repents and regrets that he asked the Lord for anything material. As he realizes it's just nothing, absolutely nothing in the presence of the, not even a drop of water in the ocean compared to the ocean of bhakti or devotion. So the pure devotees, they focus on pure devotional service and try to engage in such a way as to bring other living entities to pure devotional service also, to Shuddha Sattva stage, Vijnan, the realized stage. Okay, I'm going to finish there because we have to go this morning to the airport. We've got to get ready. So any questions? Any questions? Don't be shy. Don't cry because we have to fly. You have to stay high. Jai. Any questions? Stay high forever. Karmis who like drugs, they like to be like that all the time. Huh? Stay high forever. But nothing, even if it is sometimes in the material world, staying high is not very nice. Maybe if you're a bird, as long as you can fly, but otherwise it can be not so nice. Boring also. After a while, it becomes everything in the material world becomes boring after a while. Because there's no rasa. The rasa is very limited, very shallow. The relationship is very shallow. How much you can get is very limited. Shashvatam. Dukkhalayam shashvatam. Any questions? Okay. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna.